the opportunity for me is to double down and like build this amazing online resource for people in B2B marketing, because most people I talk to, this is not something that they learned in any type of like formal school that they went to. And I think that's what I can do with DGMG.
Welcome to Virtually Live by Kaltura. In this podcast, we'll try to sum up all the latest and greatest in marketing, and specifically in event marketing. To help us do that, we've invited prominent marketing and business leaders to share their most important lessons and give their best predictions for the coming years. This time around, LinkedIn famous Dave Gerhardt talks to Lisa Bennet, Kaltura's EVP of Marketing, on why he doesn't like the term personal branding, how to build a career, a business, an audience, or all of the above, and what to do if your CEO doesn't get marketing. Before we dive right in, just a quick FYI that since recording this, Dave has rebranded his DGMG community to Exit 5. Good luck, Dave.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Bennet, VP Marketing at Kaltura. I'm coming to you today virtually live from the Tel Aviv area in my daughter's bedroom, which has the best wall and the best frame in the house. And I am joined today by Dave Gerhardt. Dave, you want to say where you're coming from and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Dave Gerhardt. I'm coming to you virtually live from my house, the office in my house in Vermont. It's beautiful fall weather, as we were just talking about here, and I'm excited to be with everybody.
Amazing. So thanks, Dave, for joining us. I want to talk to you today about marketing in general, but about marketers specifically. And it touches on our topic of virtual events and the marketing funnel, but I actually want to talk about us. And I couldn't think of anyone better to do that with than you. So obviously you have built an incredible personal brand. And I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, is that something that just kind of came to be, or is that actually something that at the time you premeditated about and really thought about and planned for, et cetera?
I knew when I was 6 that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be LinkedIn famous. I knew it from when I was born, and I committed to this. And I'm so happy that we have achieved this. No, I had no idea. It's ridiculous. I got into marketing, and I've always kind of been a good like writer and communicator, and I kind of channeled those efforts into marketing. And I just was interested in marketing, like outside of work and outside of the jobs that I had. And so I was reading people's blogs, probably like early 2010-ish, and getting on people's email lists. And I started to get into podcasts. And I think seeing other people have kind of blogs and stuff outside of work where they shared what they were learning was all really interesting to me. And it kind of led to me starting up my own side projects of one or another, and that eventually led to like social media and being on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I kind of channeled all of the things that I post about to what I was learning and doing in marketing. And I found that when I did that, you attract an audience of people who are also doing marketing. And so I definitely didn't plan it, but I think it's one of the cool parts about social media today, where like if you are learning about a topic and are interested in a topic and kind of build a career in a topic, you can kind of you can share what you're doing and hopefully build a community of like-minded people around you. And then a couple years ago was mainly when I was like, oh, there could be bigger opportunities here. There's clearly a passionate audience about startups, about B2B marketing, about this stuff. It was really like the response to the things that I was putting out led to me feeding more of this. Like a post that I wrote that got a ridiculous response about like how powerful copywriting is led me to go and create, a talk about copywriting and a course about copywriting, or, seeing how much people valued the input from their peers in B2B marketing. Like, oh, you also do that at your company? Interesting. I'm stuck on that problem too. Led me to start this community. And so I think social media has been the tip of the spear for me to learn what people are interested in, but definitely wasn't something that I planned on doing. But I think it's one of the cooler benefits of building something online today. I didn't set out to build a personal brand, but I'm able to like publish my thoughts, and people that have similar thinking can find me and maybe we connect on that. And I think that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Absolutely. I think that, also to some extent, you're probably one of the people that actually formed the whole term, right, in retrospect of personal branding and whatnot. So, if you were a marketer just starting out today, and you wanted to somehow create that personal brand, and actually not just a marketer, I mean, what are like a few tips that you would give people? You know, you touched on it a little bit, but kind of what would you advise for someone as a professional, marketing
Yeah.
specifically, but not even to create that
Well, I
personal
mean,
brand?
I don't even like, I don't like the term. I'm not a big fan of the term personal brand, because I think when that implies that I have another type of brand. And so I think, like, for me, when I wouldn't think of like, I want to go build a personal brand. I think about like, what would, and this is not, first of all, this is not for everybody. And so you don't have to do this.
Right.
I'm not going to convince anybody to go and do this. But if you're somebody who is passionate about your career in marketing, for example, and you're interested in social media or blogging or podcasting or starting a YouTube channel, like, that would be a great way to do that. But I think of it as like, what do you want to be known for? What would it be valuable for you to be known for? And so for me, as somebody who happened to work at SaaS companies in marketing, I kind of had bigger visions of like, wow, I've grown my career to this point. I want to do some other things, do some things on my own. I think I have an opportunity to build up more of a community in B2B marketing. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. It would be valuable to me for now and in the future to be known in the B2B marketing niche, right? And that could be completely different. Maybe you started a CBD seltzer brand, right? And it would be valuable for you to be, or you want to one day. And so it could be valuable for you to be known in that space. I think for better or worse, I am just me talking about marketing, and that has what built my personal brand. And so it's not something that I'm consciously thinking about. I am consciously trying to put out content about marketing because I'm trying to build DGMG. Like, I have something that I'm building this for now. And so I have no shame in doing that. I have like a why for what I'm trying to do. But for you, I would think about, maybe you're a copywriter. You want to have SaaS company clients, right? Would it be valuable for you to be known to SaaS marketing people as a copywriter or as a interesting thinker on copywriting? Yes, it would, because you want to have business from that group of people. And so, like, I think of it more from that perspective. But it's not, for me, naturally, I've always kind of been more involved in the like communication, public speaking, writing type of things. And so this has become like an extension of that.
Very cool. You mentioned, DGMG and the university that you're putting together now, and that entire community, which is, by the way, mind-boggling, and very, very cool. I would love to kind of hear a little bit more about how that came to be. I know that you've kind of mentioned it as we started talking through it, but how did it kind of evolve into that university, and why do you feel like that's so important?
Well, okay, so thank you for asking this. Nobody's ever really asked. It started, honestly, the real reason it started was I worked at Drift for about four years, and over the course of my time at Drift is when I focused most of my kind of like efforts on B2B marketing, and that's a space that I got passionate about. I had knowledge in. I wanted to share more about that. And when I left my job at Drift, I was going to Privy, and Privy's more in the still technically a B2B SaaS company, but they're in the e-commerce space, in the Shopify ecosystem. And so I was like, man, I still want to talk about B2B marketing. This is the stuff that I like to talk about. How can I continue to do that when I go to Privy? And I was like, well, once I leave Drift, I'll start a podcast of my own. At the time, I had done a podcast at Drift, but now I can be my own publisher. I don't need to be at Drift to do that podcast. And because of the stuff that I had put out on LinkedIn, and some of the responses that I was seeing to things were just like at a level of things that I hadn't seen from other content of mine before. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to charge for this. I'm going to start a membership. I want to try a Patreon for this. My wife had been listening to one podcast that she paid for on Patreon, and I thought that was a really interesting model. She paid like $6 a month to have access to like some exclusive podcasts. And I was like, you know what? That sounds like a crazy idea, but I think this would work really well with my audience. And so when I left Drift, I announced that, and I put the first episode of the podcast behind the Patreon paywall. And I said, so here's the full story about what I'm doing after Drift and why and blah, blah, blah. And I got a couple hundred members from making that announcement. I initially called it the A list. It wasn't called DGMG. It was just called like the A list. I made it up just to be like, this is my A list of people that I'm going to share whatever's on my mind about marketing. And people liked the things that I was sharing. But two things happened. Number one, they wanted a community. They wanted to talk to each other. And so people wanted to like post questions, and I couldn't scale that. My inbox on Patreon, I had like 100 messages from people who had questions. I was like, I should just be using the wisdom of the crowd here. There's a couple hundred people. Like if they could post this, hey, what are you using for this vendor, like with each other? And so I launched a Facebook group off of that. And that was the community aspect, and it's been amazing. And then the university piece was, people really like the tactical like marketing lessons and learnings. And I kind of realized like this is a weird B2B marketing. There's not a lot of like, public information on this stuff. It's like I learned these things because I'd go to conferences and meet with people, or I'd have a lunch with two other marketers, or my former boss connected me with somebody else. And like I come from a position of privilege to be able to do those things. And like I wanted to try to like democratize that knowledge a little bit. And like, what if DGMG, that I ended up calling it, like, what if that could be the thing that, people leaned on and learned from? And most companies have some type of like learning and development budget. And so I thought, you know what? I have an opportunity to fill a library with like everything you need to know to do B2B marketing: campaign planning, budgeting, team org structure, how to hire a creative, videos, templates, guides, transcripts. And so, now I have an audience, and I'm in a position where I can kind of get some of the best content. And so I'm like, the opportunity for me is to double down and like build this amazing online resource for people in B2B marketing, because most people I talk to, this was not something that they learned in any type of like formal school that they went to. And I think that's what I can do with DGMG.
I think it's amazing. I mean, I've been following you for a very long time, and I think that the way that this has evolved has really just been out of, like you said, the need for knowledge. And I think that's a key need for anyone in any profession, but specifically in marketing, not to mention in the past 2 years. But marketing is constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. And there are those B2B specific things that people need to know. And you're either going to, like you said, find out from your peers, or, go begging for crumbs, if you will, or you're going to be able to find amazing resources. And I think that's what you're creating here. And I would love to say, on behalf of the marketing community, I think it's an amazing thing, and we thank you for it. I want to
thank you. That's super kind of you to say it that way. There's some psychological effect going there. Oh, this is what I was going to say to you, where I lost my train of thought. The most powerful thing, forget B2B marketing, the most powerful thing that I've learned through this is the power of an audience and a community, because this community, there's been this community, like, they almost tell me like what to do next, right? And it's not directly, but it's like I might post about something, or I'll see a certain thread in the group that just like blew up, and I'm like, wow, you know what? People really need like they need they want a campaign planning resource. Like this question comes up over and over. There's a million questions about planning for 2022. Hey, let's do a planning session. So I think like to any business, I'm writing a book, and the whole book idea came from the group, and like I tested the title with the group. I was like, hey, what do you think of this? I got feedback on that. So for any business, like whatever product you're selling, B2B or not, if you can have a community, if you can build some type of community of those people, and it has nothing to do with the product that you're selling, but where if you can get your basically dream customers to hang out and have conversations and be a part of that, the advantage that creates for you and what you can then go create. Like, I feel like I haven't had a lot of misses inside of DGMG, only because I usually only go and do something when I kind of feel that rumble from the community.
Which is amazing. I mean, it's, I want to say, like, if you had to pinpoint, you spoke about planning for 2022, you talked about campaign management. Are there any topics there that kind of rose to the surface that surprised you, or other examples that you can share?
Just like how many marketers have bad jobs with bad CEOs. Because it's been like this like therapy for people. Like, so much of it is actually, and this is why the community is so important. It's like, it's not that there's like this groundbreaking stuff in there that is like proprietary, but like a lot of it is like, marketers, venting to each other and being like, or seeing something and being like, I'm not alone. Like my boss just like upped my goal. Like we have to hit, 150% of the goal and he cut half of my team and like, or like, hey, is this channel not working for anybody? It's been like therapy.
Like a support
And I
group.
think that, and I think that the actual tactics and channels in B2B marketing are not that hard. What I've learned is like what gets in the way. And I saw this at companies that I've worked at, but now I get to see it like kind of at scale through all of the people in DGMG. So much of the success actually has nothing to do with, and this is the sad part, right? It has nothing to do with like creative ideas. It has to do with like internal politics and battles.
So I
And
have a follow-up question for you on that, and we only have a couple minutes left, but I've heard you on podcasts before say, if your CEO doesn't believe in marketing, you should find another job or something along those lines, right? So I know that, and you've been very fortunate to work at places, by choice, but and now that you're raising this issue, so how we don't all have, right? Not every marketer has the luxury of a dream CEO. Not every organization is marketing driven. Some are sales driven, some are product driven. And yet we need to make sure that marketing has a seat at the table. We need to make sure that, I want to say, give marketers the tools that they need to actually provide, credibility to what they're doing and get that freedom that they need for that creativity. So besides the venting and the kumbaya of everybody joining in the community to have a bit of a bitch fest, what are some tips as we kind of close off our final question? What are some tips that you think marketers can do in order to get that seat at the table and deal with this type of thing?
look, I mean, it's hard. I think for anybody that's actually watching me speak, I can deliver a message in a different way than actually in over camera. Like I play into that line because it gets people fired up and it's a very easy line to relate to. I understand it's very arrogant of me to say, quit your job if the CEO doesn't get marketing. Like I'm fortunate to be in a position where I can do that, but that is not the norm. And nor was it the reality for me 4 years ago either. And so,
Sure.
I think it makes for a nice like marketing line that I can use to get people fired up and like talk about DGMG. But I think ultimately you have to understand what you want about a specific job at a specific point in time in your career. I think those things really matter. And so maybe you can shift your mindset from like, look, this CEO doesn't get marketing. However, something's really interesting about this company. Something's really interesting about our place in the market. Something's really interesting about my boss, the person that I'm working with, the team that I'm working with, or the challenges that I'm working on. Like I would tell myself a different story. Like, yeah, this CEO is a clown. Like he doesn't get it. But we have a really interesting SEO problem and I get the budget and I get to do it. And so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm focusing on like being in skills acquisition mode. And I'm going to use this opportunity to like learn this skill in some way or another. And I'm going to translate that into my next job, where in my next job, I know that one of the criteria is going to be CEO who gets marketing, as here's how I define it. And so, it's not the end all be all. I think there's probably, and I know people today that have taken jobs for CEOs that they might not necessarily agree with their stance on marketing, but it's a great job for them at that point in their life and career, or whatever the salary or benefits are, or whatever that is. And so you take that job. I think you need to have a story that you're telling yourself about career-wise. What are you doing at the company? But then like, where are you in the macro sense of your career, whatever stage you're at, and how do you tell the story of like, you always need to be thinking about that next move. I have never had an answer to what do you want to do in 5 years? I have no idea, but I've kind of always had a rough sense for like, what do I want this current job to turn into? And so I think you just need to have a story that you can tell about that.
Amazing. I think I would add maybe that you can also impact things, if you're good at a little bit of politics, and you follow, other practices in the community and whatnot. There are ways to show impact.
I more of put that out in the world as it should be a checklist. It's more of a reminder to people that in a marketing position, you should be interviewing the company, especially from a marketing leadership standpoint. You need to be interviewing the company as well on the way in.
I totally agree. Dave, we're out of time, and I'm bummed because I have like 300 million other things I would love to talk to you about. But I so appreciate your time and your insights and your knowledge, and congratulations on all the amazing achievements you've done and all of the things that you've done for marketing generally. And we hope to see you again at some point in the future.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. I'll give everybody the PSA that it is just B2B marketing at the end of the day. It's not a big deal. You'll be okay.
Awesome.
But yeah, I appreciate it. I think the questions that you did go with were awesome, and I'm glad to have been here.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you to our guest, Dave Gerhardt, and our host, Lisa Bennet. Tune in next episode where we hear from HubSpot's SVP Marketing about the marketing flywheel. That's right, not the funnel, the flywheel. Thanks for joining.